Mayor Khan, thank you so much for joining me. You've declared that June is set to be the biggest ever month for business investment in London. 4 major international business events taking place in the capital. What kind of impact do you hope they will have, both socially and economically?
Well, I'm normally a very excited mayor, but June is particularly special for us this year. So your viewers will know about South by Southwest takes place in Austin every year for the first time ever. They've come to Europe and they're in London this week, which is just so exciting for us. The energy that South by Southwest brings in terms of AI, tech, music, fashion, film, creativity, really important. For the first time ever, Concordia, the summit that takes place during Unger Week in New York, is coming to Europe in London next week. You've got C-suite execs, but also presidents, prime ministers and others addressing this invitation-only conference. We've got London Tech Week, the biggest tech event in Europe taking place as well, and of course London Climate Action Week as well. And what it shows is London's back, and at a time of growing international instability, at a time when there are, let's be frank, choppy political waters in the USA, we're that rare thing, somewhere that's stable, that's open, that's diverse, a brilliant environment for innovation, creativity and business.
You talk about that uncertainty across the pond, Mayor, and I've heard you in speeches pitching London almost as an alternative location to the US for business and investment in this time of uncertainty. You also haven't been afraid to speak out against President Trump on issues that concerned you in his first term. How confident are you, though, that this alternative to the US strategy will bring positive returns for London?
Well, firstly, like many Londoners, I love America. I love the USA. I love the culture. Many of my family are from America. They're Americans, and I love American politics and so forth. And they're our closest ally, and it's really important we work closely with America. So I don't see America as competition. I see them as our great partners, and long may that continue. But I recognize the reality of the last few months, which is there are some American businesses, individuals, people in different sectors who, for a variety of reasons, are looking for somewhere new. And my message is very simple. Actually, in London, we've got everything you could possibly want, not just in terms of our stability, our openness, our diversity, but our values is really important as well. And I'm really pleased and proud. Over the last few months, we've seen record numbers of Americans not simply coming to do business here, not simply wanting to study here, not simply coming on a holiday here, but actually coming to live here permanently. And I'd encourage that.
When President Trump comes for his state visit, his second, obviously, the first time he came, there was a lot of controversy between you and him. Are you worried that's going to reignite? Well,
I hope not. Look, I think what's important is for all of us to put aside our personal views when it's the national interest to do so. We can't escape the fact, though, there are some things the President has said and done that are controversial, and it's really important that we speak up in terms of things we agree with, but also things we disagree with as well. And listen, the reality is, there are many things that we agree with the American president about, but there are some things we don't agree with the American president about. And what's great in a democracy, and where you have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, that people are allowed and encouraged to articulate that.
What about the recent revoking of visas for international students to go and study in the US? Do you see that as an opportunity to attract students to London?
So here in London, we have more than 50 universities. I'm really proud of that. We have more international students in London than any city in the world. We have more universities in the top 40 universities of any city in the world. We've got a great culture of not just Americans, but those from across the globe coming to study here as undergrads and as postgrads, if not in London, then Oxford and Cambridge. And let me be frank, I think there's an opportunity here for our universities, for London and for our economy, because I know the difference that pipeline of students can make, not just in terms of the economy, but also culturally and socially as well. And there has been an attack on freedom of speech, there has been an attack on higher education, there has been an attack on some of the values that both America and us, the Brits, have held for decades. I mean, I recently celebrated VE Day. This is just one example of how America, the UK and others came together for the common good. And I think the reality is some people are being deterred from going to America to study, to work, to visit. Come to London.
When you talk about the attack of freedom of speech, who are you actually talking about specifically?
Well, we know from those universities that have had funding withdrawn. A lot of that is to do with the debate and discourse that takes place on campus. By the way, I'm somebody who feels quite passionately we mustn't ever incite hatred. We mustn't ever encourage a situation where there is animus between communities. At the same time, within the bounds of legality, there's got to be an opportunity for people to discuss, debate ideas, and that includes challenging the policies of a democratically elected government through argument and discourse, not marching on Capitol Hill and trying to stage a coup, but having that argument and debate. That's the joy of a democracy, that you can ask questions of me as a politician, tough questions. We can have an argument if we have different views. We shake hands at the end. That's a democracy, right? You also, in a democracy, have a tension between the executive, between the judiciary, between the legislature. That's what separation of powers is all about. That's why many of us love America. And, you know, it makes people nervous across the globe when you've got the president of the USA behaving in the way that he's done.
Do you feel democracy is under threat under his administration?
It's not for me to say in terms of, you know, what's happening in terms of the feeling that Americans feel. What I will say, if people, you know, are nervous about America, if there is a nervousness about the choppy political waters, if there is a nervous about the instability, if there is a nervous about the uncertainty, if there is a nervousness about the values that are currently coming from White House, we in London offer that rare thing, a stable, open, diverse city. You're more than welcome here.
How does the recent US-UK economic prosperity deal change the landscape for London, do you think, and the wider UK?
Well, I think, you know, Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister since July, has really worked really hard in terms of trying to get a trade deal with the USA, and I welcome the hard work of President Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer to get this trade deal. I think it's not the end of the trade deal, it's the beginning of a really good, positive relationship between our two countries when it comes to trade. The USA as a country is the #1 country we do trade with. The second big thing the Prime Minister has done, really important, is have closer alignment and get a trade deal with the EU. As a union of 27 countries, we do 2.5 times more trade with the EU than we do with the USA. So both are equally important. But also what the Prime Minister's done is work really hard to get a trade deal with India. At the moment, his team's working really hard to get a trade deal with countries in the Middle East. So that's what you want when it comes to a successful country, grown-up leadership where we understand the importance of trade in terms of goods and services, but also people, really important.
How would you describe the US-UK relationship? Is it still as special, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the wiliest things that the Prime Minister did was to appoint Peter Mandelson to be our ambassador in the USA. Why? I've known Peter for some time. He's a grown-up. He's been a politician, serving in the British government. He's been a commissioner at the European Union. He's a progressive, but also he's dexterous, nimble, and can be diplomatic. And I don't agree with President Trump when he called Peter good-looking, by the way. Peter's many things. Good-looking he isn't. But the point being is, look, you know, the Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister has recognised that, you know, it's in the national interest for us to get a good deal with the US. But actually, separately, our history tells us that we've got a special relationship, not just when it comes to fighting, you know, fascism, Nazism during the Second World War, but also in terms of the things we have in common. Look at how, you know, we're trying to persuade, you know, America to stay engaged with NATO, really important. And particularly when you've got the uncertainty caused by, you know, President Trump in terms of foreign policy, in terms of, you know, climate change, in terms of some of the other issues. I think the special relationship is really important because what you want, Tania, is you basically, I see it as two best friends, right? Now, your expectations of an acquaintance or a colleague are different from your expectations from a best friend, but also you can be more candid and honest to a best mate than you can to a stranger. And I'm hoping that, you know, Keir and President Trump have a relationship where they can work together on things they agree with, but also have the space and confidence to have a conversation about areas where there's disagreement.
Well, we've just seen US private equity firm KKR pull out of the Thames Water rescue deal. Is Thames Water solvable?
Well, look, what your viewers may not realise is our country in the 1980s privatised some essential utilities, including water. And Thames Water basically are in charge of the water supply in most of London. It's a company that's been badly run. It's a company that's in the past been paying out dividends to shareholders, but not investing in infrastructure in water. We've got a situation in London where we often have leaks of water supplies. We've got sewage discharge taking place in the river, and bills go up and up and up and up. And so what we don't want is the taxpayer bailing out this private company. My nervousness is with this company pulling out, this private equity company pulling out of the support in Thames Water, that Thames Water goes into special administration. That's bad for everyone. What the government's trying to do is to provide calm and certainty to potential investors. The Secretary of State has said this week he'll work closely with Thames Water to see if they can bring in additional investment, because Thames also needs investment. It is a monopoly, but we've got to make sure that the taxpayer, the bill payer, isn't picking up the tab for years of neglect from Thames Water owners.
Is there anything you can say, Mayor, to reassure customers about another rise in bills?
Well, the government's been quite clear. We had a record increase in the bills we pay recently. I won't accept another massive increase, another massive hike in our bills. It's really important at the same time to give reassurance to the owners of Thames Water in terms of the government providing a space where they can try and get additional investment in Thames Water. I'm somebody who is pragmatic when it comes to these things, but at some stage, if Thames Water don't sort themselves out, the government will have to step in. I don't want that to happen, but it is the last chance for Thames Water.
What about your growth plan for London?
Well, the government's been quite clear since they were elected on July the 4th that the number one mission they have is growth. Now, the public sort of doesn't really understand what growth means, and so it's really important to explain what we mean by growth. What I mean by growth is those businesses that currently here want them to flourish and thrive and expand. Those who are thinking about starting a business, I want them to start up a business and help them scale up. Those that are multinationals, I want them to come to London and invest here. So we have worked with the private sector, with business representative groups, with universities, with local authorities, with trade unions, and many others to draft a London growth plan. It's a 10-year programme of how we grow our economy over the next 10 years by more than £127 billion. That's great news for the government because it means they get more receipts coming from London to the government. We already contribute about a quarter of GDP. We can contribute even more with this growth plan. But Londoners benefit because they will see additional income in their pockets, their bank accounts, by £11,000 a year. And what we've done is continue to invest in the sectors that are doing really well: finance, professional services, culture, and so forth, but also recognise the emerging new sectors: quantum computing, robotics, AI, clean tech, creative industries, and so forth. And we're going to help our universities, from Imperial College to UCL, help startups and scale-ups do even better in those growing sectors.
Of course, there are reports that a lot of high net worth individuals are leaving and have left London to go to cities in Europe or in Asia, in the US. How concerned are you about the effect that will have?
Well, I'm somebody who's campaigned and wants to be the mayor for all Londoners, whether you're somebody who's at one end of the spectrum or whether you're somebody at the different of the spectrum. I recognise that with the best will in the world, I don't create jobs, wealth and prosperity. It's those in the private sector that often do, working with those of us in the public sector as well. My message to anybody who's nervous about staying in the country because of changes made in the tax regime by the Chancellor is bear with us. Look, I think London's the best place in the world, not just to start up, scale up, but also to live. Not just because of the great environment we've got for businesses, but also at the best theatres, the best museums, the best live music, the best way of life of any city in the world. So I'm not going to name cities. Wherever you're thinking of going to, you want to enjoy that city as much as you do London. And look, this summer, we've got Sabrina Carpenter and Stevie Wonder coming. We've got Billie Eilish and Beyonce coming. Nowhere else in the world do you get that.
You've also got, as you mentioned, London Tech Week. NVIDIA's coming to town. Are you going to be talking to Jensen Huang?
Well, NVIDIA's great. They've already agreed to invest in a data centre in the Docklands, so thank you for their investment in that. They're also investing in other parts of the country. I'm quite keen to meet not just NVIDIA, others as well who come to London. The great thing about these American companies is they understand the power of collaboration. We in London have more than 1,300 AI companies. That's more than the other 2 or 3 in Europe cities combined. When it comes to tech investment, look at the top 4 in Europe: London, Paris, Stockholm, Berlin. Those 3 next combined has around the same tech investment as we do in London. But also we're a place where you can pioneer. I believe there should be, regulatory guardrails, but also there should be an ethical framework. And what NVIDIA and others want is that certainty. So the great news is the government supporting us to have more data centers. They're supporting us to have an inclusive talent pipeline of people coming through. But also think about the environment we have, the agglomeration, financial services, professional services, higher education, creative industries, and so forth. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure NVIDIA are coming during London Tech Week, but also why we're really keen to encourage this inward investment to our great city.
Have you got a meeting with him in your calendar?
Well, I don't share my diary with anybody publicly and stuff, but I'm really keen to meet and speak to anyone who comes to London that wants to invest here or expand there. I mean, not just NVIDIA. We've had recently great news about Google and Amazon and Apple expanding their operations in London. So whatever your size and scale is, London's open.
The UK has been criticised, though, for over-regulation. You've got the Online Safety Act coming into effect. What do you say to those? How do you balance regulation with competition so that London doesn't get left behind?
Look, what we don't want is a race to the bottom. What we want is to make sure there is transparency and certainty when it comes to, inverted commas, the rules of the game in London. And so actually when I speak to innovators, when I speak to those who run businesses, what they're crying out for is certainty. And by the way, that's one of the differences between us and the USA. I mean, I know when I speak to chief executives and others, the nervousness about what President Trump will do from going to bed and waking up, right? You don't get that in the UK. Prime Minister Keir Starmer does not go on Twitter or any other form of social media during the course of the night. So you know what the rules of the game are. And the Online Safety Act is really important because we know there are too many examples of particularly young people who are vulnerable. There are too many examples of how the algorithms work in a negative way. Too many examples where I'm afraid those who run platforms have removed staff whose job it is to take off things that are untrue and that are insightful. And that's why I'd encourage people who have got companies overseas, people involved in the AI sector or the tech sector, to come to the UK because you've got the certainty and the stability.
How healthy do you think London's future is as a financial hub?
Well, I think Brexit was a real blow to London, a real blow to our country. I think it's the biggest example of self-harm ever inflicted by a government. I think it's a bad mistake made by David Cameron and his successors over the last few years. I think this Prime Minister trying to make the best of a bad hand. He's talked about resetting relations with the EU. I'm really pleased we've got a new trade deal with the European Union. We've got to build upon that. I'm somebody who believes there should be a youth mobility scheme with the European Union. I'm somebody who believes there should be an Erasmus Plus schemes with the European Union. So we've taken a bit of a knock because of a Brexit, but I think we're back. You've got grown-ups running the country. You've got a government wanting to deal with the USA, with the European Union, with India, with the Middle East, and many others. And that demonstrates we're a great place to come, not just financial services, professional services, tech, AI, culture, creative industries. So in addition to the best place in the world to come if you're in finance, if you want to make a film, come to London. If you want to make a TV program, come to London. If you want to go on concert, come to London. If you want to have a great holiday, come to London.
It's also attracting many great sporting events, and there's talk about WrestleMania coming to London, and all the fans were getting so excited when they saw you last year having conversations with Triple H. Is that a reality? Can you get WrestleMania here?
Well, listen, I was bowled over by Triple H's enthusiasm, not just in terms of WrestleMania, but the whole team in relation to the project. I mean, WWE has just taken off in terms of the last few years. I mean, I'm now seeing John Cena in movies, not just in the ring. And I recognise that we are, particularly during the last 9 years that I've been mayor, now seen as the sporting capital of the world. Wimbledon starts very soon. We've got great cricket taking place. We've brought American football here. We've brought American baseball here. I'm talking to the NBA about bringing basketball to London. I'd love for WrestleMania to come to London. So Triple H, if you're watching, we want WrestleMania to come to London.
Are you a WWE fan yourself?
Well, not as big a fan before as I am now. I'm a huge fan now. Triple H is a good example of why I'm a fan. And by the way, if WrestleMania came to London, my message to the team there is we wouldn't just have a great weekend, we'd have a festival of legends in WrestleMania coming to London. Current stars, but also future stars as well. It's a huge potential for them to come to London, and it would open up a completely new market for them as well. I know they've got a great deal with a rival channel, Netflix. But the point being is that I think the potential has not been reached in terms of WrestleMania. We are the sporting capital, in my view, of the world, and if WrestleMania wants to expand, the obvious place to come is London.
Just finally, you're in your historic third term of mayor. Will you go for a fourth one?
Well, listen, you sound like my mum. That's the sort of thing my mum asked me, and my wife as well. And so, look, I mean, I'm enjoying being the mayor of London. I think I've got the greatest job in the world. It was only about a year ago where I won that, historic record-breaking mandate, and so let's wait and see.
There was a former mayor that became Prime Minister, and he always said he didn't want that job, but could you see that in your future?
Well, my message is, if you've seen what a mess he made of being Prime Minister, you don't want mayors near the office of Prime Minister.